Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Look Good, Move Well podcast. No, don't mean to sound cheesy, but, just want you all to feel welcome here. We had an icebreaker yesterday in a staff meeting, which I unfortunately was not able to be present for because we're on the road up to a podcast with some other cool people up in Sacramento. But Satya, you were present for it. What was the question?
I don't want you to miss it. So it was, what is your favorite Olympic sport to watch? And if you could participate in any Olympic sport, what would it be?
Whew, man, I feel like the Olympics have taken a massive, nosedive. Just, yeah, when I was really young, I think it was this weird transition for the last couple Olympics where it's people aren't watching network TV anymore,
right? That was
and they're
a big
kind of
difference.
moving into streaming services.
Not the same.
Where do you watch it? What's going on? And when I was a kid, it was we have the TV.
You'd book your schedule.
Oh it was a big deal.
Me too.
And so anyway, I've kind of missed the last few Olympics. We barely exposed our kids to it in the last one, and but as a kid, I really was a big Winter Olympics fan.
Yeah.
I loved watching the downhill, the super giant slalom or whatever it's called, where they're ripping so fast.
Yes.
Because I got really into skiing as a kid, downhill skiing, and man, just to see those guys and girls go so fast, and then occasionally wipe out, and I don't know, it was really
gnarly.
entertaining. And then to get, I don't know why that sport, I think maybe with swimming, although I wasn't that interested in watching swimming until Michael Phelps was breaking all sorts of records, but prior to that, the skiing always was so it just embedded that appreciation for the clock, the stopwatch, these tenths of seconds. They've been up on the mountain for 5 minutes skiing, and it comes down to a
smidge.
Yeah, who had the more slick suit on that was less wind resistant,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was always it. Although I didn't really want to participate in that sport.
Right.
I like to go fast, but I did not want to go that fast. I think I actually I kind of got, I always thought it could be super fun to do the luge or the skeleton type thing. I was this is a slide. This is a pretty fast slide. How rad is that? Certainly come to learn more about that sport and just about how dangerous it is. But it was definitely something I thought would be cool as a kid.
Yeah, cool.
What did you say to the answer? What was your...
Well, as a kid, I loved the horse events because I rode horses all growing up. As an adult, I really enjoy watching women's Olympic weightlifting because, and this is what was so special about when the Olympics were broadcast on network TV, because they really filled you in on the stories behind the people and made it feel more intimate. But because I follow a women's Olympic lifting and I know the personalities and the battles, and so that makes it more exciting. So I enjoy watching that.
Yeah.
I would not want to participate in that because I would be too nervous, but if I could dream myself into any sport, I think I would want to participate in pole vaulting because it just looks so fun to just be flying over the, you go so high and the momentum of the thing and
totally.
it just seems like magic, heaving yourself over that thing, and then it'd be terrifying, but it'd be exciting.
No, that's a great answer. I didn't, if I had thought about that, I might have even dropped that because it does seem fun. Okay, well, we're going to jump into
a totally different topic. Nutrition.
Yes. And, I guess I'll introduce this one because I am in the midst of writing a blog or an article that is, the working title right now is something like 12 diets over 12 years. All of them have been successful and all of them have been failures. And so what do you make of that? What does that mean about this whole thing? And the perspective that I had kind of coming into just the idea behind it was, it came from a quote, actually, I think a Hormozy quote, which is so weird that we quote this guy. He's
all
just
the time.
so fucking...
He's so in our brain.
Damn it, he's good. But he said something like, go build yourself a stack of undeniable proof through hard work that you can accomplish these things. Like rather than yell, I mean, I'm butchering the quote, but it was like, rather than yelling affirmations and, doing the writing in your journal saying, I'm great, I'm going to be great. It's like, okay, put that aside, go to work your ass off, prove yourself that you can do the thing by actually having the results time and time and time again. And that's kind of what made me think about the whole diet concept or nutritional approaches. It's like, I wish everybody could go out and have 6 very successful journeys with food, and then likely have a failure or a roadblock at some point that they can identify, like, well, what made that, what was the roadblock? Not like what was my perception of what the roadblock was, but like what actually was the roadblock, and then be able to step back after all that and be like, whoa, I did low carb keto, I did high carb low fat, I did paleo, I also did animal based, I then did macros, I did intermittent fasting. All of those I was able to, over the course of a period of time, lose weight and have a body that I felt really confident in. What does that say? Does that say that intermittent fasting is magical? Does that say that paleo is the best way? Does that mean that animal-based is curing, every ail that you have? Well, no, because I did it these other ways and was successful in these ways. Like, oh, I'm the variable that makes it work. It's me. It's my consistency, my commitment. And actually, when I zoom out, the one thing that's in common is that, whatever the thing you're looking at, but specifically around diet, it's like, oh, if I just eat enough protein and I make sure I can control my calorie intake, then it works. And the moment that the diet or the rigid approach that I'm taking doesn't allow me to do that anymore, that's when I fail. It's not that like the gluten that I was having created this like weird inflammatory psychological connection to my gut that made me, dump out excess cortisol, and then suddenly the cortisol was making me, hold on to magical body fat in my hips, and that, oh my gosh, like, that is just such a stretch from reality. And by having this body of work, right? Hey, I'd done these things these different ways and I was successful in these different ways. Wow, that teaches me that I'm the person. And I could write the same thing about fitness approaches, strength training approaches.
Yes.
Like, hey, I got muscular doing this. I got muscular doing that. I got muscular doing it this way. I was able to lose body fat with this type of training. I was able to lose body fat with that type of training. I was able to do it with this type of training. I was able to, you name it, right? The CrossFit athlete, it's been to the CrossFit Games 6 times. Oh, this is a great one. Like, in the early days it was like, oh, so-and-so is with this training camp. They're with Ben Bergeron. They made the games 2 years in a row. And then next year they're with HWPO, and then the next year they're with Training Think Tank, and the next year they're with OPEX, and the next year they're with, and every year they make it to the games. And it's like, oh, yeah, like, I used to think it was because this training program you were following was like legit. It's like, no, you're legit. Like, you're the outlier. Like, Katrin, she's been with 3 different camps. She keeps making the games. She keeps being legit. Like, it's whatever is going to work for her at the time to motivate her, inspire her, but it's not the thing, it's her, right? And that's the intro to the topic, everyone.
Okay. Well, I think first follow-up question, just to frame this and make sure that I have this correctly in terms of how you think about it. It is not a diet itself that makes or breaks your success. it is how well that diet gives you structure to follow consistent practices that work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's which reminds me of sort of a bullet point that I have listed out for this is diet versus nutrition is like exercise as is to training.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? It's like if you go on a diet that is a kind of a short-term, immediate focus. Just like when you come to the gym to exercise is for the short-term expenditure of energy. You come into exercise to experience a short-term, goal or gain. And it's not necessarily a consistent, like there's no connection from exercise session to exercise session. It's just the goal is come in and burn energy.
Yeah.
A training program is when we have a very thoughtful connection between individual components or sessions. You kind of orchestrate this sort of training progression and method and build that over time will yield new skills and new abilities that then, again, compound. And so over the course of a year, you're a different person at the end of a training as you've trained. Whereas at the end of a year, if you've just been an exerciser, you haven't changed. You haven't developed new skills. You've just gone in and done the requisite amount to burn the energy and to just, yeah. That's with diets, is like, I'm just doing the diet so I can just check the box. But when you have these, you have a nutrition plan or structure, and you're using these experiences through quote unquote dieting or, commitments to a certain way of eating or intentional approaches to nutrition, you are now building your nutritional foundation. And at the end of this process, you should be a new person in that you have a new way that you look at food, a new way that you kind of frame how you think about feeding yourself, how you prepare your food, how you look at nutrition generally.
Yeah.
And I think when you diet or you get too hyper-focused on one specific diet as like this tool that's like, oh, this is the thing.
Yeah.
Then you're not actually adding, you're limited. It's like you're just going in and doing your daily exercises to burn some calories. What are you learning from that experience that is going to add to your nutritional knowledge, your nutritional IQ, your long-term approach to how you're going to handle your nutrition? And if you've done, 6 of these things, 7, 12 diets successfully, then the goal for you is to extract what are the things from each one of these, outside of just being your best self consistently, that add to your nutritional foundation going forward.
Yeah. Well, because you've done so many different types of diets, I think first it's worthwhile to reiterate the things that are common among all of them in terms of what, makes a nutrition approach successful or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd also love to hear if you've noticed any patterns or what insights you've gotten from how well or effective those different approaches have helped you be consistent in the things that work.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's, I don't want to, let's start listing some things off. I don't know how many we're going to get through, but, number one, I think the most important thing is, I've kind of come to the conclusion and the belief that calories are king. To use the king-queen example, I'm sorry if that's maybe not, maybe we need to update that, but to go with this example or this analogy that maybe people can understand, calories are king, quality of food, queen. Like one comes first. So calories are first, quality is kind of second. And people are maybe going to get upset by that. Be like, oh, you can't just like, it's all about food quality. And I'm a huge, like, you can't have one without the other, really, but you can just focus on quality, and you can vastly overeat for your needs, and people can get sick.
Yeah.
Okay. That's I think it's like important to let that sink in. People are like, oh, if you're just eating really healthy, organic, clean foods, like, you're not going to get sick. I'm like, you can actually, like, because one, there's no like definition of what healthy, clean, and organic like really is.
We hear like, I eat clean, like, from so many different types of people.
Sure, yeah. It's poorly defined. Like, there are organic, gluten-free, graham crackers at the store,
Oreos.
And there's also an organic, gluten-free, fair trade chocolate bar, and then there's like the same thing plastered, like a gluten-free, fat-free, marshmallow, and it's like, okay, well, all those things are clean, so and they're all packaged really pretty at the health food store, so I'm just going to eat s'mores every day, and you can definitely go wrong with that and end up overweight and having metabolic dysfunction and like health complications from that. That's a kind of a very specific example, but it's like it's amazing how that's permeated into so many different types of foods and ways that people eat. It's like, oh, it's healthy, it's clean. So that's why that's like the number one thing, is just understanding how these diets all impact the quantity equation, and when diets do that in a way that feels very easy for somebody, like, hey, when I followed this diet, it was super easy for me to like control for my, energy intake and my calories that I'm taking in. That is the biggest win. That's what makes people feel like, I love this. When I just like, and that's typically why diets that just tell people to like cut out a food group feel so effortless for a period of time for people. Mm-hmm. When I just did paleo, it was so great for the first year, because I just completely cut out grains and all these, and dairy and all these foods that were pretty calorie dense, and I didn't really replace them with anything. I just cut them out. So suddenly I just was eating less, and it was awesome. And then eventually I started to learn that there's like all these other ways to be paleo, but like eat the things that I love. There's now paleo baked goods. There's paleo this. There's paleo alternatives. And all of a sudden I started to let those foods creep back in, or those calories creep back in. Now the diet isn't really doing the thing that it was meant to do in the first place, which was help you control your energy intake. Mm-hmm. So recognizing that's the biggest thing that we need to control for. And then secondarily, making sure that we have a foundation of good quality foods. And by quality, I mean highly nutrient dense, lots of vitamins, minerals, and they are essentially supplying some of the things that are not energy, like fiber, and again, micronutrients, and they're easily digestible, and they're impacting your digestive system in a positive way. So if we have those kind of main quality definitions, then it's like, okay, we create accountability and consistency on energy intake, and then we hit those quality notes, and that's a key recipe. The second your diet isn't doing that anymore, that's when it starts to fail. So you move on to the next thing. Oh, well, if I do intermittent fasting, that seems to be super easy. Why? Because you just cut out a meal of the day, and now the calorie equation's working again. You're like, oh, sweet. Like, I just cut out breakfast and I'm just eating lunch and dinner. I just cut my calories in a third. So now I'm back to like winning the calorie game. And then after 6 months, you basically learn how to eat a bigger dinner and a bigger lunch,
right,
and add in the snack in the afternoon, and your intermittent fasting isn't really fasting anymore. Or you're like, oh, I heard that intermittent fasting, it's cool if you like have butter in your coffee in the morning.
Right.
So then you're like adding in 300 calories of butter, and you're like, why is this not working anymore? It's like, because you're not really following the principles that are actually getting at the successful, aspect of this. So those are a couple consistent points that I've found is you can use all the tools, you can use all the diet hacks and tricks, but you have to be aware of what your energy needs are and whether the tool that you're using is actually helping for that, right? And I think that I'm not articulating it perfectly, but people are like, man, I need to be low carb to be successful. And it's like, you don't need to be low carb to be successful, but you probably were at one point successful because of low carb. The reason being is you were eating a normal balanced diet, you cut carbs out, and you were like, whoa, I lost weight for the first time. Because it's easy to just identify where carbs are, and everyone likes to label them as bad. So you're like, oh, I did something healthy for myself by cutting them out. The only thing that was really that healthy about what you did was you cut calories out of your diet by removing a whole entire macronutrient. It worked for a period of time, and then it stopped working because you started eating more fat, or you got carb cravings and you would binge carbs on the weekend, and you're like, why isn't this thing working anymore? Because you negated its impact on the calorie equation.
Yeah.
So now, but unfortunately, you have it stuck in your brain that the thing that I did that one time, carbs, cutting them out was successful. And so you just hang on to that. And now you're afraid of carbs, and you don't know how to deal with carbs forever. And this is where I was at with like, go and do it again with a different approach to prove to yourself that carbs are not the enemy. Go high carb, low fat, and just be damn diligent with your calorie intake for 2 months and show to yourself that you can lose weight. It's what I like about Jordan Syatt's little experiments that he does.
Yeah.
He's like, I just went and purposefully spiked my blood sugar by eating sugar, Krispy Kremes, gummy worms, all the things that people say make you fat. And I did that for 30 days straight, every single day. The first thing I did every single day. And I lost 10 pounds. Tell me how that makes sense. I just, if it was for himself, that would be enough. He shared it with a bunch of people. It's a case study of one, but it's like, this is a very good evidence and a clear demonstration that is just not true. Blood sugar spikes do not make you get fat. Are they problematic for health? Are there some reasons why we should pay attention to them? Absolutely. But it's like people are like, hey, don't eat that because it's going to spike your blood sugar and you'll never lose weight. It's like, that's not true. Mm-hmm. Just like if you don't cut carbs, you can't get lean or you can't lose weight. That's not true. And I have had to go through this process for years, and that's how I've always approached new ways of eating is I don't go into like an animal-based experiment for 3 to 6 months and be like, oh, this is like, I'm going to find like the new thing that's going to be my forever diet. It's like, what am I going to learn from this thing? I did that with paleo. Like paleo was like, this is my forever diet. And I was like falling into the trap of like, why isn't it working anymore? And then I was like, oh, it's just about the low carb thing. So I'm just going to go low carb, but I'm going to eat oh, that's not working. I had built into my own belief system that carbs were terrible.
Right.
Okay, what did I do? All right, I'm gonna go high carb, and I'm gonna go low fat, and I'm gonna buckle up and just do this thing with as much activation energy as I do anything new. And look, lo and behold, like, wow, I can really maintain or build the body that I want or feel the way I want to feel on this other diet. That's a totally opposite end of the macronutrient spectrum. And I'm not like a unique person. Like one of these maybe works best for me and I might gravitate towards that over time, but we can all make these work so long as they follow some of these foundational principles of helping us control our energy intake and getting us enough quality that's in there to feel like we're getting to get properly nourished, where we have all the micronutrients and minerals that we need to thrive and to function.
Yeah.
And it's like challenging your assumptions of what this is the only thing that works for me, or this is the only truth, or I've heard this and therefore it has to be. It's like, no, not always.
Yeah. There are a couple things I'm pulling out of this. One is that where there is a diet approach, there is also a corresponding way to cheat.
Of course.
And like I was just going through my mental catalog of things. It's like, okay, Weight Watchers. It's like then they came out with like the special Weight Watchers brownies that like, or like the 100-calorie Oreo packs, or like, okay, paleo. Now there's like all these like paleo baked goods. And
Totally.
like, the keto treats, the keto brownies. And,
yes.
And so just being aware of that is so key. And then I think the other thing is that all of those diets and nutrition approaches sound so much more appealing and more sexy than and more magical than like control your calories.
Yeah.
And that's why
eat
like
less, move more.
the boring is like the hardest part, but
Yeah.
that's like what makes it work.
Yeah, and I still think that's like, what are the things that help you achieve that goal? Like, what movement practice gets you feeling good about moving more?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Like, when I switched to walking instead of high intensity cardio, like, that actually gets me moving more, because walking never feels hard to start.
Yeah.
It's like, let's start walking, but that super tough high intensity session, like, dang, I got to get myself up for that. I got to think about it. I'm only going to last for 15 minutes, like, it's okay. That's just one strategy, right? Or you're like, hey, getting up and going to a group fitness class, that gets me going. And that's way better than if I try and, do it on my own at the gym or follow a program, or that's what's working for me. Mm-hmm. So you figure out what helps you in these departments, getting moving more. What helps you, control your calories? Well, rather than focusing on a diet, it's like, what are elements of the diet? I know that when I eat a higher fiber diet, that it is absolutely more, it's much easier for me to control my energy intake and to balance out, avoid overeating. High fiber foods, and including them at multiple time points in the day, works really well for me.
Yeah.
Thinking about like, and it's funny, you're going to hear some things that are like, oh, these are just general things I've always heard, but it's like getting more fiber, leaner meats. All right. So like, is there anything wrong with a ribeye steak? Is there anything wrong with, a well marbled, piece of meat? No, there's nothing wrong with it. It's delicious. It's amazing. But a 10-ounce ribeye versus a 10-ounce, chicken breast, like that's a factor of 2x the calories.
Yeah.
For the same volume of food.
Right.
Where the actual macronutrient there that makes you feel full is more the protein than the fat. So should you never eat a ribeye? No. And maybe some people can really portion control, like, oh, I'm good with 5 ounces of ribeye or 3 ounces of ribeye. That's all I need. It's like, I like to have a bigger piece of meat and bigger piece of protein in my meal. And I'm also trying to hit higher protein targets. So like, if I just bias towards eating mostly lean meats most of the time, I do much better overall.
Yeah.
And I can still enjoy a ribeye periodically.
Right.
Another one is making sure that I, front load protein in my day. Like recently I've gotten back into my overnight oats and really been enjoying that, but I've been having overnight oats in the morning and the protein content was kind of on the lower side.
Yep.
And I was finding myself like just maybe wanting to eat more throughout the day. And I was like, oh, I got to keep that protein content a little bit higher. Like, so that was just a learning for me. A lesson is like, oh, a reminder. are overnight oats what are making it hard? Like, are oats bad for me? It's like, no, it's the components of that meal that might either fill me up or leave me feeling a little bit more hungry at times. Whereas somebody else is like, when I have oatmeal, I don't want to eat for like 5 hours. Like, okay, maybe that's a win for you. Maybe that's a win because now you're really good at controlling your energy intake because that really fills you up. It satiates you.
Yeah.
And looking for particular, maybe one more thing that I have found is successful is that, when these diet approaches really but like simplify the foods that I'm eating, that has always been a big success.
Yes.
When I followed meal plans, I'm calling that a diet approach. A meal plan is like, here are your meals. You're going to eat them every day for a period of time, right? Not the most sustainable practice. Like, nobody wants to eat the same 4 meals a day for the rest of their life. But when you do 4 meals a day that are the same, you never have any variance to it. And you know that what you've put on the plates for those 4 meals, by the math and how much you're moving, is going to get you towards your goal. Guess what? Like, it works every time. Like, when actors and actresses need to get in shape for a movie role, they do it. How do they do it? They eat the same thing every meal, every day. They have their personal chef make it for them or whatever, and they just do it. And is it uncomfortable? Yeah, it's uncomfortable. So I'm not saying that like that's the thing you need to do. It's the lesson from that where it got really simple. There was less options. When you're like, when you wake up, you're like, what am I going to eat today? Where am I going to go to lunch? Like, where should I go out for dinner? It's like, now you're introducing so many variables to your food, and you're now relying on like this emotion and how you're feeling and what might sound good at any given time, and versus being like, hey, these are like the 30 foods that I eat. Every week I kind of stock my house with the same things, and most of my meals are a combination of these same ingredients, so I can kind of like get a really good sense and eyeball how it's working for me and how much energy I'm taking in. And then once a week I go and indulge and have a meal out or do something different, but it's sort of, again, the simplification process. So I think I gave a few kind of general points there of what I've learned over the years has worked for me. And that's what kind of my diet looks like. It's like, get my protein in, focus on leaner protein sources for the most part. Not that I don't love a ribeye or I don't love like a fatty fish or something like that, or even like a pulled pork or something. But for the majority of the time, it's leaner. I'm going to make sure I'm getting fiber at almost every meal, and thinking about that when I'm choosing carbohydrate sources. For me, it's actually making sure I'm getting enough carbohydrates, which is what allows me to feel like I'm getting, it actually increases my satiety, like the right types of, like a boiled potato is one of the most satiating foods that's available to us. So like choosing foods, specifically carbs, that fill you up. And simplification, just not having, on any given month or 2 month stretch, I've got my like 20 to 30 foods that are pretty much ingredients or staples that make up most of my diet. And those things that I just mentioned are almost, they're almost like universally consistent amongst all the quote unquote diets that are out there that people are having success with.
Yeah.
Those are sort of the common traits that you would see.
Yeah. Awesome.
Sweet. Okay. I think we beat this one into the ground. I hope you all got something from it. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Satya. We'll see you on the next one.